You know, a suitcase, it's an object we all know. We see it and we think of travel, maybe a new adventure, or a fresh start. But in the hands of a killer, it becomes something completely different. It becomes a container for the perfect portable crime.
I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a true nightmare scenario, right? Something straight out of a horror movie. But for some people, this has been their horrifying reality.
Get this, an app sent them there. It's called Randonautica, and it generates random coordinates for you to go explore. So on this one day, it led a group of teens to Duwamish Head in Seattle. They were actually filming it for TikTok, expecting some fun adventure, but what they stumbled on was a full-blown crime scene.
And yeah, this completely surreal discovery kicked off an investigation that would uncover a truly chilling story of betrayal and murder.
So what was inside? The remains of Jessica Lewis and Austin Wenner. Turns out they'd been shot and dismembered by their landlord, who later got a 46-year prison sentence, and he used suitcases to get rid of their bodies, which is a shockingly common tactic.
The thing is, the Seattle case, it's just one of the latest examples in a really long, dark history of what people call suitcase or trunk murders. It seems like for as long as we've had luggage, some killers have looked at it and seen a tool. To really get a handle on this, we've got to go back in time. The history here is surprisingly long and disturbing, and oddly enough, a lot of it centers on one particular English seaside town.
Yeah, this is definitely not a modern phenomenon. This timeline goes all the way from 19th century England to 21st century New Zealand, and the method, it stays brutally consistent. But it was really the year 1934 that put this crime on the map.
So, in 1934, the city of Brighton was just rocked by two separate trunk murders in as many months, and the contrast between them is pretty striking. The first victim was found in a locker at the train station. She was dismembered, and to this day, she has never been identified. The second victim, Violet Kai, was found completely whole, hidden in plain sight in her killer's own apartment. He was using the trunk as a coffee table.
And to cover his tracks, Violet Kai's killer, a guy named Tony Mancini, sent this chillingly simple telegram to her family. And the lie worked, for a while, anyway. He was actually found not guilty at first and only confessed to the murder decades later.
Okay, so all of this leads to the central question, right? What drives a killer to choose this specific, really bizarre method?
Is it just about convenience or concealment? Or is there something deeper, something psychological, about turning a human being into luggage? Well, if you look at modern cases, the motive for the murder itself is all over the map. You've got rage, like in the Sarah Boone case, greed, with Heather Mack killing her own mother for a trust fund, and even severe mental illness, as with Hae-Kyung Lee. The key thing here is that the reason for the killing is different every time, but the chosen method of disposal is the same.
Let's zoom in on that Sarah Boone case for a second. The story she first told police was that it was all just a terrible accident, a game gone wrong. But the evidence on her own phone, that told a completely different story. It was one of deliberate cruelty and revenge.
Her own words, recorded on video, sealed her fate. See, she wasn't just hiding a body. The suitcase itself was the murder weapon. She used it to inflict this slow, terrifying death as payback for what she claimed he had done to her.
And that brings us to one of the most gruesome parts of these crimes. Because if the victim doesn't fit, the killer is faced with a really horrific choice. Dismemberment in these cases isn't always about sadism. It's a practical and monstrous step in problem solving.
Whether or not a body is dismembered can tell investigators a lot about the killer's state of mind. Cases that involve it, like the famous Melanie McGuire murder, suggest a high degree of planning and resolve. But in contrast, cases without it, like the death of Jorge Torres, might point to a more impulsive crime, where the suitcase was just a weapon of opportunity.
But here's the great irony in all of this. The very object chosen to make the crime disappear is almost always the thing that brings it to light.
A killer can't just make a suitcase vanish into thin air. I mean, think about it. It's designed to be noticed, to be carried. It has a purpose, and that purpose is its fatal flaw as a tool for hiding a body. It practically begs to be discovered.
It's almost like a script for failure, and it usually goes something like this. The killer's whole plan relies on the suitcase just staying hidden forever, but that almost never happens. Eventually, someone, a station attendant, a taxi driver, a teenager on a beach, will find it.
And the discoveries themselves are often incredibly mundane.
which just makes it even more chilling. A family in New Zealand buys the contents of an abandoned storage locker at an auction. A trunk is left behind at a train station. A suitcase just washes up on a beach. And in each case, the ordinary world just collides with the horrific.
This number, 4 years. That's how long the bodies of Yuna and Minu Joe, the children murdered by their mother, remained hidden in those suitcases. They sat inside a storage unit until a completely random auction brought them to light. 4 years.
So, why do these specific crimes capture our attention so much? Why do they stick in our minds so powerfully?
Well, on one level, it's the cold logic. A suitcase offers portability, and it promises concealment. But on a much deeper level, it's about depersonalization. The act of putting a person in a box. It reduces them to an object, just an inconvenience to be moved around and thrown away. And that idea is profoundly chilling.
It really is the ultimate perversion of an everyday object, isn't it? A symbol of life and movement gets twisted into a coffin, a final, undignified rest in place. It's a paradox that forces all of us to confront that terrifyingly thin line between the normal and the monstrous.